He thought his presidency was behind him until the phone rang. A cold morning in New York. One message. 3 words. The codes leaked. Now, Bill Clinton must confront a ghost from his own administration, one that could bring America to its knees. It was a quiet morning in Chappaqua, the kind of stillness that usually brought comfort. Bill Clinton sat at his kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, his mind drifting somewhere between old memories and the silence of retirement. The world outside was still half asleep. Then his secure line vibrated, something it hadn't done in years. There was no ringtone, no ID. Just a black screen and 3 words etched in encrypted text. The codes leaked. The phrase stopped him cold. He had read thousands of briefings in his lifetime, stared down global crises, navigated nuclear standoffs, but nothing felt quite like this. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement. A fact. The unthinkable had happened. Somewhere, somehow, the most guarded set of numbers in American defense history, the codes that could decide life or extinction, had slipped through the cracks. He didn't even finish his coffee. He walked to the study, pulled the blinds, and keyed a response into the secure device, a line of confirmation only a few people on Earth would recognize. The reply was immediate. Pentagon. Level 5. East Vault. Midnight. He stared at those words, heart pacing faster than it had in years. It felt like stepping back into the shadows of a world he thought he had left behind. Retirement was supposed to mean detachment, closure. But now he was being pulled into something that reached back into his presidency. Maybe even before. The hours passed slowly. He dug through old files, scanning nuclear procedures from his time in office. Most of it was standard, rotations, protocols, authorization chains. Until he found it. A blank entry in the 1997 log. A missing date. A signature line with no name. At the time, it must have seemed like a clerical glitch, but now it stood out like a bullet hole in a clean wall. He remembered that summer vaguely. High tensions overseas, shifting alliances, and a mysterious cybersecurity drill that was never fully explained to him. Could it have been a cover? Had something slipped past him while the world was watching somewhere else? He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just outdated data. Maybe someone was testing his reaction. But deep down, he knew better. The message wasn't a theory. It was a threat. At noon, he was scheduled to meet with a contact from the Pentagon. No aides, no media, no motorcade. Just a quiet entry and a locked room in the lower levels of a building he once commanded from above. It felt surreal, like a ghost of his former self had returned to handle unfinished business. As the sun rose higher, Clinton stood at the edge of something he couldn't yet define. A breach of this scale wouldn't just shake Washington, it could fracture alliances, incite panic, and rewrite the boundaries of global power. And if it started during his presidency, if the trail somehow led back to a moment he failed to notice, then the weight wasn't just national. It was personal. He slipped on a coat, not for the weather, but for the armor of routine. With each step toward the car waiting outside, he felt older, not tired, aware. The kind of awareness that comes when history knocks again, long after you've stopped listening for it. And this time, it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a reckoning. The Pentagon hadn't changed much, not on the surface, at least. The same sterile corridors, the same hushed urgency in every footstep. Bill Clinton walked its halls like a ghost returning to the scene of something half-remembered. His clearance was still active in deep systems, untouched since his presidency. That in itself was strange. Most former leaders had theirs revoked or downgraded. But his, still green, still valid, almost like someone expected him to come back. He was escorted without a word down 2 levels below the known secure areas, to a place rarely entered, never photographed. They called it the East Vault, but there was no official record of it. Even the guards didn't look like Pentagon staff. Their uniforms bore no insignias. Their eyes didn't blink. Inside, the room was colder than it should have been. A long table stretched beneath low, flickering lights. At the far end sat a woman Clinton didn't recognize. Middle-aged, pale eyes, posture like a statue. She introduced herself only as Director Shaw. No agency given. Just the title and a folder, thin, gray, unmarked. She slid it across the table. Inside, a single page. A memo dated July 17, 1997. His presidency. His signature. But it wasn't his handwriting. The document authorized a routine code transfer during a cyber drill. Only 4 individuals had access at the time. 2 were dead, 1 had disappeared, and the last was sitting at this table. Or so they claimed. He stared at the page. It looked authentic. His name was there. The seal, the formatting. But the signature, he couldn't remember signing this. And Clinton remembered every major order he ever gave involving nuclear assets. Director Shaw's voice broke the silence. Calm. Even. This wasn't detected until a week ago. The key entry was buried under 5 layers of decommissioned encryption. It only surfaced during a server migration. He asked the only question that mattered. Has the payload moved? She hesitated. Then, we don't know. It was the worst possible answer. Clinton leaned back. He felt it now. How this could have slipped past him. In '97, national focus was elsewhere. Foreign conflict in Eastern Europe, economic restructuring, midterm pressure. He trusted too many people, delegated too many decisions. And now a ghost from that delegation had come back with teeth. The room fell quiet. For a moment, the former president wasn't a symbol or a statesman. He was just a man, staring at the possibility that a mistake, his mistake, might have compromised the unthinkable. Director Shaw closed the folder. We believe the breach originated internally, not a foreign actor. Of course, it was always the inside jobs that got missed. Foreign enemies were expected. Domestic hands behind the curtain, though. That's what rewrote history. She handed him a second document. It wasn't a report. It was an ultimatum. Either Clinton publicly support a new internal audit of the entire nuclear chain, or someone else would, and they drag him into it. It wasn't blackmail. It was insurance. A chance to get ahead of the leak. But it also meant making noise. Noise he'd sworn he was done with. Clinton folded the page, stood, and didn't shake her hand. Outside the vault, the world went on. Paper pushers in suits passed him in the hallway, unaware that the air had just changed. He stepped into the daylight, blinking. Somewhere, somehow, America's nuclear backbone had been fractured, and the break had started on his watch. Now it was his to fix, before the system tore itself open from within. Bill Clinton had faced scandals, crises, and political traps, but this wasn't that. This wasn't about perception or legacy. This was about something far more dangerous, silence. And whoever engineered that silence had done it from inside his own administration. He didn't go back home that night. Instead, he checked into a small D.C. hotel under an assumed name, one he hadn't used in over a decade. No security detail. No aides. Just him and a laptop loaded with restricted files someone at Langley had quietly passed along. A favor, or a warning. The documents were scattered across timelines and systems, but one pattern kept surfacing. A man named Raymond Talcott, Deputy National Security Advisor, 1996 to 1999. A career intelligence officer, quiet, obedient, never made headlines. Clinton remembered him only faintly. A sharp suit, sharper eyes. Someone who never spoke unless it was urgent. He was never supposed to have access to nuclear sign-off authority, yet his name kept showing up adjacent to flagged entries, including that missing July log. What bothered Clinton wasn't just a pattern. It was that no one had mentioned Talcott in years. No memoirs, no appearances, no leaks. It was like he'd been erased. He ran a trace on Talcott. No recent addresses. No employment. But there was a blip, a security badge used at a Virginia government facility just 6 months earlier. The badge was expired. The facility no longer listed as active. But someone was still letting him in. Clinton leaned back, exhaling through his nose. It wasn't just an administrative oversight anymore. This was deliberate, calculated, hidden for decades. And now, rising from beneath the surface, like a corpse in thawing snow. He drove out before sunrise. Virginia countryside blurred past the windshield as he replayed Talcott's voice in his head, not from memory, but from an old, grainy tape he'd recovered. The man had once briefed him on foreign threats, cyber espionage, deep system protocols. Listening now, he realized Talcott had known too much, spoken too little. The facility was disguised as a decommissioned federal logistics hub. Chain-link fence, empty parking lot, dusty signage. But Clinton saw it instantly. Surveillance cameras still active, entry gate clean, no rust on the padlocks. He didn't get closer. Not yet. He took photos from the tree line, logged coordinates, and called a single number. The only person from his past he still trusted with black-level clearance. The voice on the line answered with a code word only they shared. Clinton said one sentence. Raymond Talcott is alive. There was silence, then a sigh. Then this goes deeper than we thought. That's when Clinton knew. The breach didn't start in 1997. That was just the cover. The real operation, the one no one was supposed to find, had started earlier, maybe before his presidency, maybe long before anyone had noticed. And the worst part, he wasn't sure if Talcott was working alone, or if someone higher up had helped him disappear. As night fell, Clinton sat in the dark with a notebook, sketching timelines, names, dates. Each thread he pulled led to another. Each knot he untied revealed a new one. He wasn't chasing a traitor anymore. He was hunting a machine built to stay hidden. The rain came down hard as Bill Clinton stared at the monitor in his hotel room, its glow the only light in the dark. He had been awake for 36 hours. Sleep was a luxury he could no longer afford. Not when every minute brought the world closer to a line no one was supposed to cross. Across the screen, a message blinked from a confidential server, once used for presidential continuity operations. The subject line read, "Sequence activated. 7 days." He didn't need to read the body of the message. The sequence was a legacy protocol, one designed for continuity of government in the event of nuclear disruption. It meant someone somewhere had used access keys to initialize a dormant chain, and once that sequence completed, the system wouldn't care whether the activation was legal. It would assume war was imminent and respond accordingly. Only 4 people alive could still trigger that process. 3 were accounted for. The 4th had vanished in 1999. Raymond Talcott. Clinton's hands trembled slightly as he picked up a secure line to the National Command Center. No introductions. No pleasantries. "I need the current DEFCON status," quietly. "And I need a manual override on Continuity Alpha." The voice on the other end didn't argue. They knew better. But even they sounded uneasy when they answered. "We're at DEFCON 3. No public alert, but we're seeing movement in places we shouldn't." That was all Clinton needed to hear. He closed his eyes and thought about the map. Not the official one, the real one, the shadow blueprint every president inherits on day one. It shows not where the enemies are, but where the responses are housed, which submarines, which silos, which floating launch codes drift in circles of protocol. If Talcott had accessed those levels, and it looked like he had, then it wasn't just about old data. It was about control, about the power to make a threat look real enough to force a reaction. And in a world already boiling with tensions, that illusion could be fatal. He moved quickly, coordinating a triangulation of Talcott's last confirmed locations, security badge pings, and internal personnel lists. His team, or what was left of it, worked quietly through private networks, government servers, and even the dark web. What they found made his stomach drop. In the past 6 months, Talcott had accessed 3 minor defense contractors, all under shell corporations. Each had one product, firmware used in outdated missile guidance systems. Obsolete, forgotten, except by those who knew where to look. Clinton's voice cracked when he said it aloud. He's building a false trigger. Not a real attack, just a ghost of one, but enough to trick the machine into reacting, enough to launch a retaliatory strike from the inside. And the clock was ticking. In 7 days, unless manually halted, the system would move from simulation to active status. And once that happened, the response wouldn't be human. It would be automatic, cold, calculated, final. Clinton leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. "Get me a direct line to NORAD," he said, "and prepare a speech. If I can't stop this in time, someone will have to explain what we did and why we failed." The past wasn't done with him, and now the future might not wait. It was 5 days before activation. Bill Clinton hadn't seen daylight in nearly 2. The basement of a secure DC installation hummed around him, Concrete, steel, blinking lights. This wasn't a war room. This was something older, colder, buried beneath layers of redacted history. The kind of place even presidents weren't supposed to know existed. He hadn't shaved. His voice was hoarse, but his focus was absolute. Across a wide monitor, simulations played on loop. Missile arcs, radar shadows, response patterns. The Ghost War was already underway, in code, in servers, in algorithms designed to anticipate Armageddon. The final report was worse than he feared. Talcott had built a chain, a silent simulation that mimicked an attack scenario from a hostile nation. The false signals, timed perfectly, would trip global detection systems. American submarines, air bases, and command bunkers would interpret the data as real. If not stopped, the automated response would launch retaliation. Nuclear retaliation. There would be no negotiation. No phone call between world leaders. Just annihilation based on a lie. And it had all started under his watch. Clinton stared at the schematic. He'd been the leader of the free world. He'd delivered speeches on peace. He'd shaken hands with tyrants to avoid this very fate. And yet here he was, a man in exile from his own legacy, trying to defuse a doomsday device no one else even knew existed. A soft knock broke the silence. A young technician entered, nervously holding a tablet. "Sir, we may have found him." A feed opened. Grainy footage. Infrared. A single figure entering an abandoned naval data node in northern Alaska. The timestamp matched the access signal that triggered the countdown. It was him. Raymond Talcott. Clinton stared at the screen. The man was gaunt, older, but unmistakable. He moved with purpose, not madness. This wasn't some deluded extremist. This was a strategist. A believer. A ghost with a mission. "What's he doing?" Clinton asked. The tech hesitated. "We think he's preparing to watch it happen." There was no time for politics. Clinton picked up the secured line and made the one call left in his power. Not to an agency, not to Congress, but to a covert unit that didn't officially exist. They had 7 hours to reach Talcott and shut him down. If they failed, Clinton would issue an override sequence buried beneath the continuity protocol, one that would disable the entire American launch matrix. But doing so would send a signal to every major power on Earth. The U.S. had just gone dark. It would be seen as weakness, vulnerability. It could invite real war. He sat with that weight, alone. The next few hours passed in fragments. Updates came in. Aircraft en route, weather delays, GPS jamming near the site. Nothing was certain, and the timer kept ticking. 1 hour left. Clinton sat back, staring at a small, plastic keycard marked Omega. It had only one purpose. It was the kill switch. And then the call came. They had reached the site. Shots fired. System access interrupted. But they were too late. Talcott had already uploaded the final sequence. Only a remote detonation from the Omega key could stop it. Clinton didn't hesitate. He inserted the card. A single confirmation window opened. Disable primary network. He took a breath, thinking not of politics, or headlines, or history books, but of silence. The silence that follows light. The kind that never ends. He pressed yes. The system went dark. Across the globe, hidden servers blinked off. Submarines received fail-safe orders. Satellites reset. And just like that, the Ghost War was gone. Clinton slumped back, hands trembling. He'd stopped it. At a cost. Because the moment he did, he made America vulnerable. Just for a moment. A moment the rest of the world would never forget. He didn't give a speech. He didn't brief the press. He just walked out, coat slung over his shoulder, eyes hollow. He'd saved the world. But he'd never outrun the ghost that started it. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and press the like button.